Hi guys. Today we're going to be talking about another Nietzsche essay called On Truth and Lie in a Non-Moral Sense, published in 1873. So it was one of his early works. We're kind of going chronologically so far. Um, so let's just start with how he begins this essay. It's gonna be an extended quote, but it sets the stage for what he's gonna say later on. He starts. In some remote corner of the sprawling universe, twinkling among the countless solar systems, there was once a star on which some clever animals invented knowledge. It was the most arrogant, most mendacious minute in world history, but it was only a minute. After nature caught its breath a little, the star froze, and the clever animals had to die. So what is he saying here? He's saying basically, in the grand scheme of the universe, the amount of time that humans have been on Earth is very limited. And this idea that we possess knowledge or we can get closer to some truth, some actual knowledge is fleeting. And as we're going to be discussing further, it's deceiving. We're deceiving ourselves. Um, why does he think this? First and foremost, he doesn't think truth or knowledge is the primary, should be the primary driving force of what humans seek to achieve in the universe, in the world. Um, he thinks that's not a good goal to set for us. He wants to say yes to life, as we said in a previous video. He wants whatever benefits, quickens the activity, benefits the life, vitality of life, of our lives. So if the truth gets in the way of that, it's not useful to us, so get rid of it. Uh, whether or not we agree with this in our day and age, in the modern era, I'll leave that up to you to interpret. But he wants to say whatever that is important is what gives us vitality, what gives us strength, what gives us power, what gives us courage, what gives us good things to drive our lives forward. So that's just how he starts the essay. It's a very short essay. You can pick it up in this volume. It's pretty short, maybe 15, 20 pages. It's titled On Truth and Untruth, Friedrich Nietzsche. There's other excerpts from other books in it. If you don't care whether it's a physical book or um, a digital copy, you can probably find it online easily. Um, in any case, so later on in the essay, he is taking aim at Kant, Immanuel Kant, the 17th century one of the most influential philosophers ever. He's saying the thing in itself, which is something Kant describes, the thing in itself, the thing as it is, the true essence, the actuality of the thing, as opposed to our perceptions or anyone's perception of the thing. Kant separates these two categories. So Nietzsche describes the thing in itself as being what would be pure knowledge. Thing in itself would be pure knowledge without consequence. But Nietzsche thinks this is utterly impossible for us to grasp. We can only grasp at metaphors. It's unintelligible to us. We can't get at the truth with our senses. So we should leave that to the not make that our primary objective in life. Uh, with how he describes it in this section, it seems that he's saying that it's not anything to strive for, but it implies that if it's not something to strive for, it still implies that it exists. So that's an important point here. It's not altogether clear whether he is trying to say the thing in itself doesn't exist. We invent it. Our perceptions are, uh, we create the world through our senses, through our perceiving of it. Um, or is he saying we just can't get the truth in itself. It exists, but we can't attain it. It's unattainable to us. If he says it's unattainable, this would be very similar to what Kant thinks, but if he's saying it doesn't exist at all, then that would definitely be against anti-Kant's view of the topic. We can only grasp at metaphors, like I said, not to the original essences. So he is basically taking Kant and Plato both to task in this essay. Um, he's trying to, uh, you know, together with the thing in itself, he draws a parallel to Plato's idea of forms of things being idealized versions of, not versions even, there being a form to everything that exists and that we can't get at the form. What we see is only, uh, you know, uh, an approximation of that form, but it's not the actual truth. So Nietzsche, doesn't like this view. He says it's not uh, life affirming. It's not conducive to us living well. He thinks that Plato's idea of the forms basically uh, make us question our senses of touch, taste, smell, sight, and that these senses are all that we have to make sense of the world. Without our senses, how can we make sense of anything? So, if we take ideas that Plato's forms are true, this idea of the forms are true, then we're kind of denying our senses and we're saying our senses can't get us anywhere. We can't trust our senses. So is that life affirming? I think it's very consistent with Nietzsche to say that it's not life affirming. And because it's not life affirming, this goes throughout Nietzsche's corpus. It's very important that because it's not life affirming, we should toss it aside or set it aside. We should think about it maybe only after 5 or 10 other considerations. It shouldn't be the first and foremost value. This is basically Nietzsche's perspectivalism. There are as many truths or as many realities as there are individuals. Um, it's an interesting view. Many philosophers have described Nietzsche as a perspectivalist. I agree with them. Um, but it's a difficult thing to swallow that there are as many truths as perspectives. So on page 34 of this book, of this edition, he basically gives an example, and I think this is a very good example to elucidate what he's trying to explain here. And that is, if I give a definition of mammal and then after inspecting a camel declare, behold, a mammal, a truth has indeed been brought to light, but one of limited value, by which I mean it is thoroughly anthropomorphic and contains not a single point that would be true in itself, real and universally valid apart from man. So this is something that another influential philosopher in the 20th century, very famous, Michel Foucault, very influenced by Nietzsche, he basically copies this idea that um, knowledge or truth is just power. It's just who's able to impose their view of what reality is on the others. So here the example is, if there is such a thing as a mammal, it's something we've invented. We set categories, we categorize animals in certain ways. We could categorize them other ways, but we choose not to. We choose to categorize them in X or Y way. And when we observe that this falls into this category, the category which we've created, we think we've discovered some truth of reality. Nietzsche thinks this is foolish. It doesn't make sense. It's purely anthropomorphized. It's human created. It's not some objective truth that we have discovered in the world. And so he forgets that the original metaphors of intuition were metaphors and takes them as the things themselves, things in itself that we talked about with Kant as well. Um, yeah, that's another quote. It's interesting that Foucault basically copies him. If you read Foucault, if you read Nietzsche first and then Foucault, you can see how influenced by him he was. Um, Then on page 38, there's another example of his perspectivalism. He says, against this, it must be said first that if each of us had a different kind of sensory experience, if we ourselves could perceive now only as a bird, now as a worm, now as a plant, or if one of us saw the same stimulus as red, another as blue, and if a third even heard it as a sound, no one would talk about the supposed law-like uniformity of nature, but would instead conceive of it only as highly subjective construct, only as a highly subjective construct. So again, this is perspectivalism. Here he seems to be implying that there's as many um, perspectives as there are beings in the world. There's infinite perspectives. As long as there are beings, different beings on Earth, there are that many perspectives and that many truths, that many realities. Um, we create reality through our perspective, through our senses. Uh, it's in our head, in other words. There is something there, but once it gets um, filtered through our perception, it becomes something different, and we can't get at the thing in itself, as Kant would say. It's very interesting if we take the thesis of his essay as being there's two possibilities. The thing in itself doesn't exist, which is maybe a more radical claim, perhaps, or the thing in itself does exist, but we can't get at it. We can't obtain that thing in itself. We can't get at the truth. We can't get at reality. That would be very in line with what Kant thinks. And we're going to be talking more about the relation between Kant, Nietzsche, even Marx and Hegel later on. Um, And yeah, that's the essay basically. Let me see how many pages it is if you're interested. This is a really small book with pretty big um, text. So the pages are small. It's only about 30 pages. You could probably finish it in a day. If you have any questions about this, I'm going to be applying this framework of truth and lie in a non-moral sense to something that happened recently in pop culture, and that is the um, rap beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake that culminated in the Super Bowl performance with Kendrick. Um, and if you're interested in that, let me know. It'll be my next video after this one. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you want more content that explains philosophical concepts in a short, uh, understandable way that makes it accessible to you. Um, yeah, uh, please see you in the next one. Thank you.